has receded. It's dropped about 4 feet in the last 10 years, and this is no longer wet.
The shrinking Salton Sea and the latest threat that could affect the health of Imperial Valley residents. Speaking out against a plan to build a new home for the San Diego Chargers, the group who says the ballot measures could hurt tourism in San Diego.
Don't cry, Mommy.
These are really an iconic species with their bright blue coloring and that bright yellow tail.
Finding a home for Dory, the science development that may bring this iconic fish to your aquarium. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. The Federal Aviation Administration has ended a noisy debate over Lindbergh Field. San Diego County Supervisor Greg Koch says the agency rejected a flight plan proposal today. It would have tightened the loop made over Point Loma by some planes taking off from there. This could have increased jet noise over the neighborhood. The proposal was part of the FAA's Social Metroplex project, which seeks to reroute some of the region's air traffic. Consumer advocates are mourning the demise of several legislative efforts to reform California Public Utilities Commission. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson has the details.
California's legislative session ended this week without any votes on a number of key measures. Lawmakers failed to act on bills that would add an auditor to review commission rulings and one that puts limits on when retired utility executives can serve on the commission. Consumer watchdog's Lisa Tucker says lawmakers also killed a bill that would allow the PUC decisions to be challenged in court.
One of the most important things is being able to actually sue the PUC in Superior Court. You can't do that right now. Right now you can go to the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, and mostly you don't get anywhere.
Another blow to CPUC critics came when an appellate court judge decided not to allow a public records request for emails exchanged between the governor's office and the Public Utilities Commission. Questions have been raised about Jerry Brown's connection to the energy industry in California, and attorney Mike Aguirre is seeking the communications to see how that correspondence affected the deal to close the San Onofre nuclear power plant. Attorney Mike Aguirre says the rules need to be changed so a Superior Court judge decides the fate of Open Records Act requests.
What is so powerful about the Public Records Act is to have a Superior Court judge, the judge that you always go to the first instance where there's a litigation, and to have that judge actually review the records against the claimed exemption to see if they're exempt.
The commission has been under fire for 2 years for its communications with utilities it regulates. Aguirre is considering challenging the decision in the state Supreme Court.
California lawmakers have nixed 2 bills aiming to boost transparency of the state's coastal commission. The bills would have required lobbyists to report their attempts to influence the commission, and it would have banned private meetings between commissioners and people they regulate on many occasions about land use. The bills were proposed after lobbyists and developers allegedly influenced the commission's decision to fire its executive director. Brock Turner was released from jail today after serving 3 months of his 6-month sentence. The former Stanford University swimmer was convicted of sexually assaulting an unconscious woman on campus, and his light sentence sparked national outcry. It also prompted California lawmakers to pass a tougher sexual assault law.
The law has to be that if you rape someone who is unconscious and intoxicated, you go to state prison, and that bill's on the governor's desk right now, and we're urging the governor to sign it. I think it's great law for California.
Turner plans to head to his native Ohio to live with his parents. The 21-year-old must register as a sex offender for life and faces 3 years of supervised probation. A controversial answer to California's overcrowded prisons, a measure to give thousands of inmates early parole. It's backed by Governor Jerry Brown. It's limited to non-violent offenders, but opponents point to the Brock Turner case. They say California's definition of non-violent is just too broad. It includes certain types of rapes and sexual assaults using deadly weapons. A new development tonight in a lethal injection case. An appeals court today in Missouri says that it must reveal the source of lethal injection drugs used to carry out a death sentence. 2 death row inmates in Mississippi are behind the legal challenge. They want to know why Mississippi doesn't adopt a one-drug injection method like Missouri. They've also subpoenaed Missouri for details about its execution drug. Missouri's Attorney General says an appeals is planned. The death penalty in California will be on the ballot this November. Join Midday Edition host Maureen Cavanaugh next Wednesday at 7 p.m. for a live town hall event. You'll hear from experts from both sides of the debate. For more information, visit kpbs.org/townhall. It could be another setback to building a new home for the San Diego Chargers. 2 more San Diego groups are saying they can't support the ballot measure for a new downtown stadium. The San Diego Tourism Authority and the Hotel Motel Association came out against the measure C and D today. Both organizations say the measures present a substantial threat to San Diego tourism industry. They oppose the elimination of Tourism Marketing District. They also oppose increasing hotel room taxes, and they argue against efforts to ban the expansion of the San Diego Convention Center. It's already illegal to sell synthetic marijuana in California. Governor Jerry Brown is now considering a bill to outlaw possession of the drug known as spice. A first offense would be an infraction. After that, it would become a misdemeanor. The ACLU is opposed to the bill. Let it go to voicemail. That's the wish from officers and safety advocates who want Americans behind the wheel to put down their cell phones. But too many people just can't resist the temptation to answer the text message. Associated Press reporter Noreen Nasir says there are signs the problem is actually getting worse.
On the streets of a Boston suburb, a frequent sight for law enforcement.
Hello.
Hi.
What are you doing on your phone? What are you watching? Are you streaming a video?
Yes.
Pull over in there. That's unbelievable. Is that Facebook? Just be honest with me.
Yeah.
Okay, just pull into right there for me. What were you doing on your phone?
I was just texting my mom.
Drivers distracted by their phones. A problem Officer Matthew Montero and officers across the country say is only getting worse.
On a busy day, commuter, probably can get 1 every 3 minutes.
Nearly 3,500 people were killed in crashes involving distracted drivers in 2015. Fatalities involving cell phone use spiked by 17% from the previous year to 476 deaths nationwide. Tens of thousands more are hurt. But safety advocates say crashes involving cell phones are vastly underreported because police have to rely on what drivers tell them.
There's another guy on his cell phone.
While distracted driving tickets have gone up in many states, consistent enforcement remains difficult, partly because of cutbacks in traffic units and because of gray areas created by texting laws that haven't kept up with emerging technology.
People are doing so much more than just texting. They're emailing, they're Skyping, they're Snapchatting.
46 states have laws against texting. But in many states, the offense level of distracted driving is the same as a parking ticket.
The general public and also members of the legislature in all the states do not yet take distracted driving seriously enough.
Harvard School of Public Health is crafting campaigns to combat distracted driving.
Instead of trying to convince people that they are the problem, which they'll turn off to as a message, we want to talk instead about the other driver who's creating a threat to themselves in order to get their attention.
For now, though, Officer Montero is educating people one by one.
And there's a ton of gray area, we get that.
But now I'm going to be more aware of my surroundings.
A warning and a lesson many drivers around the country ignore despite the clear danger. Noreen Nasser, Associated Press.
You should get a life of a job.
San Diego is one of the top destinations for Southern Californians who are traveling over this long Labor Day weekend. AAA says Las Vegas, San Francisco, Yosemite, and Catalina will also see an influx of visitors. The city of San Diego has received a top honor for its website. It ranked second best municipal website portal nationwide. San Diego County also received top marks for its relationship with constituents. The city's website trailed just behind Denver's. Paper plates with hand-drawn pictures of hunger were on display today in Point Loma. KPBS reporter Susan Murphy tells us this event kicks off Hunger Action Month here in San Diego.
The display of paper plates, each illustrated by children and families affected by hunger, brings the vastness of the problem to life. More than 420,000 people across the county struggle to get enough food to eat.
The rate for children, though, is 20%, so 1 in 5.
Executive Director Anahid Bracke with the San Diego Hunger Coalition says other vulnerable groups include seniors, those who are disabled, and military families. She says the number of people at risk of going hungry has only decreased slightly since the 2008 recession.
A lot of the jobs that we had pre-recession that were higher paying, more consistent, had benefits, haven't come back. So even though we have something like a 5% unemployment rate in San Diego County, it really doesn't tell the story about how people are struggling with trying to piece together part-time jobs.
The Hunger Coalition plans to send the paper plates to elected officials across California to urge policy changes and more resources to help end hunger. Community members are also encouraged to help by volunteering their time and donating food to food banks and pantries. Susan Murphy, KPBS News.
Democrats in the California Assembly need to pick up only a couple of seats in the November election to win two-thirds control of the chamber. That's the vote threshold to raise taxes and change House rules. Political experts say there's a favorable path for the party, but political consultant Mike Madrid says Trump's unpopularity may not hurt the party in down-ballot races. Democrats would need to pick up one seat for a supermajority in the state Senate. Young Hispanics, Asian Americans, and African Americans are much more likely to trust Hillary Clinton than Donald Trump to deal with immigrants living in the United States illegally. But young whites tend to trust Trump more, both to deal with those who are in the United States now and to secure the border. This information comes from a survey done by the Black Youth Project at the University of Chicago. Among young people overall, 47% say Trump would be better to handle border security, 26% say Clinton, and 18% say neither.
Recreational pot is likely to be legalized in November. We take a look at who will pay for regulation. And the city's climate action plan assumes thousands more will walk, bike, or take public transit to work. Realistic or preposterous? We'll look into it all on the Roundtable tonight at 8:30.
What a sight at San Diego Bay today. It's the annual Festival of Sail. It kicked off this afternoon with a parade of ships. More than 20 tall ships and other vessels from around the world are taking part. It's slated as the largest tall ship festival on the West Coast. Organizers say it typically draws a crowd of more than 100,000 people. Boats will be open for tours throughout the holiday weekend. This is the start of a 2-month voyage with 3 more stops on the West Coast. Well, you can expect mild weather this Labor Day holiday weekend here in San Diego. Temperatures are expected to continue to drop a couple of degrees, but the good news is the skies will remain clear and sunny. Heather Waldman has that in tonight's forecast.
Well, in keeping with a typical late summer pattern, we've still got a couple of showers across the 4 corners. Nice dry flow, though, coming in right off the water. Little cooler for central and northern California, and temperatures in southern California will start to wane as we go through the next couple of days as well. But it's still going to be very comfortable, especially in those inland areas where it's not going to be quite as hot. Tonight, the clouds will increase in the metro area as that marine layer starts to build in just a little bit. Temperatures will stay in the middle 60s. That's pretty common along the waterfront there, 63 in Oceanside and in Chula Vista. But notice you go up in elevation and inland, temperatures will be in the 50s in Ramona and Alpine. A cool 48 in Mount Laguna, but temperatures vary greatly this time of the year thanks to the sunshine in the afternoon. 65 in Borrego Springs, will stay close to 70 degrees in Mecca, but even that is about 10 degrees lower than what we were at the beginning of this week, and that heat is going to continue to fade across the desert southwest as this little push of cooler air continues to move south and eastward. A little chilly by the bay and up towards the Rhino area as well. Here's the setup for early next week. This dip in the jet stream stays locked in place, so temperatures will be at or even a little bit below average, even in Southern California, out into the desert areas as well. All the heat instead is going to be focused into the central U.S., while eastern states enjoy some much more comfortable weather. So here's a look at the 5-day forecast. Temperatures at the coast will stay in the 70s over the next couple of days. Generally low 70s Monday into Tuesday, and then Wednesday we start to see that cooler air break a bit. We'll be back closer to 80 degrees Wednesday afternoon. Each day could see some low clouds, but expecting plenty of sunshine during the afternoon. A little farther inland, not as much effect from the marine layer there. Temperatures should climb a few degrees higher, generally upper 70s to low 80s over the next few days. Plenty of bright sunshine through the afternoon. So if you're going to be outside through the weekend or into the day on Labor Day, bring the sunscreen. Overnight lows will be comfortably cool in the mid to upper 50s. Some may want the jackets just in case. Into the mountains, again, beautiful. A little cold there overnight. Temperatures will be dropping into the mid 40s through the weekend, but in the afternoon, the sunshine, a little bit of a breeze too. That's going to make it feel more like the mid to upper 70s later on in the day. Tuesday and Wednesday, generally sunny, but we'll maybe watch out for an afternoon thunderstorm on Wednesday. That's going to be something to look out for. Temperatures generally cooling down a bit into the deserts. Triple digits on Saturday, but then mid-90s through the start of next week and into the mid part of the week as well. Lots of bright sunshine throughout the next several days. Heather Waldman for KPBS News.
The federal government is banning some chemicals that used to be common in antibacterial soap, but many customers may not see much of a difference. Most soap companies have already stopped using the chemicals. The Food and Drug Administration says the companies couldn't prove the chemicals were safe and effective. In fact, the FDA says antibacterial ingredients could actually do more harm in the long run than good. You will still find antibacterials on the market, and there are some chemicals that are still under review. The Salton Sea has been on the edge of ecological disaster for years, but proposed fixes have been deemed too expensive. KPBS reporter Eric Anderson says now the region is facing a new threat, and some wonder if it's too late for the state to take action.
The Salton Sea is California's largest lake, and in many ways, it's an ecological marvel. So when you look at the shore of the Salton Sea, you might see what looks like sand along the coast. But what it really is not sand, but the shells of animals, barnacles in this case. Agricultural runoff and evaporation have teamed up to make this shallow body of water much saltier than the ocean. Tom Anderson surveys the lake from a vantage point near Red Hill Bay.
Salton Sea is shrinking, and this is a parcel of land. It's about 500 acres that used to be part of the Salton Sea.
Anderson says it's been years since the lake threatened to flood nearby farmland.
The sea has receded. It's dropped about 4 feet in the last 10 years. And this is no longer wet. It used to be great shorebird habitat. There'd be shallow water all the way across.
The sea is shrinking because there is less water flowing in. Less water means wide swaths of dry lake bed are being exposed to the air.
So this was dry playa. We drove across it at one point, and then on a windy day, the winds pushed the Salton Sea back up onto this playa and flooded some of the low areas, including these tire tracks. And when that water evaporated, it left behind the salts and minerals, and this provides an example of just how salty the Salton Sea is.
The playa is crusty as it dries. Anderson sweeps his foot across it.
There's like billowing clouds of that fine material off the playa.
There's plenty of wind here to pick up that dust. Imperial County already has the highest childhood asthma rates in California, and officials worry the new dust will make that problem worse. Here at Red Hill Bay, about 500 acres of dry playa will be flooded to control the dust. But the problem is much bigger.
So we've seen about Probably about 13,000 acres of shoreline exposed over the last 10, 12 years, and it's pretty dramatic if you go out there on the southern portion of the sea where it's shallow.
Tina Shields is a water manager for the Imperial Irrigation District. The public utility controls both power and water in this desert valley. She says the Salton Sea has always had its issues.
The sea has always had its challenges because it's an inland body of water. It has no fresh water source. Our drainage and the runoff from the cities and stormwater supports the sea. So it's had a constant challenge with increasing salinity.
Shields says the region has been thirsting for a solution to the lake's woes for years, and the countdown began in earnest just over a decade ago. That's when California agreed to restore the Salton Sea as part of a deal to urge the Imperial Irrigation District to sign on to a sweeping multi-state water-sharing contract. That agreement created a pathway for the district to sell water to urban areas.
Every acre-foot of water that's conserved and transferred to either San Diego or Coachella is an acre-foot of water that's removed from the Salton Sea. So we've been providing mitigation flows since 2003 in an amount intended to equalize the salinity level.
But those mitigation flows stop at the end of next year, and water shipments to urban areas are ramping up at the same time. Shields says computer models estimate some 75,000 acres of playa will be exposed over the next 3 decades. California finally put $80 million for Salton Sea restoration work into the state budget this year. Bruce Wilcox works for the California Natural Resources Agency. He concedes that's little more than a starting point.
It would have been a much easier process if we would have started earlier. But moving forward, we can construct this habitat. We've got the money to construct some of it right now. We'll get more funding moving forward.
That state commitment is crucial, and the multi-billion-dollar restoration effort will have to ramp up quickly. Wilcox says there's more at stake than the health of the Imperial Valley.
If we're not successful at the Salton Sea, and again, I think we will be, but if we're not, that certainly would put a red flag up for future water transfers and might even impact this water transfer.
Tom Anderson, who's worked at the Salton Sea for 15 years, says change is coming quickly. Lake levels are sinking an inch or two a year, but that could jump to a foot a year.
Because the shoreline is so gradual, 1 foot can, in certain areas, it could be a really wide, expansive shoreline that's exposed,
Anderson worries the state may not be able to move quickly enough to stave off a crisis. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Video journalist Chris Arciaga helped produce that story. New test results on the wound of an endangered white rhino point to possible poaching. Wallace the rhino has been recovering from a suspicious injury since arriving at the San Diego Zoo from South Africa last November. The animal care team has found metal fragments in the wound, indicating the animal was the target of a failed poaching attempt. Experts say they don't consider the injury life-threatening. Wallace is one of 6 female white rhinos in the San Diego Zoo. San Francisco 49ers Colin Kaepernick will not budge. The quarterback did not stand again during the national anthem, this time in San Diego. Kaepernick took a knee while the Chargers conducted their 28th annual salute to the military last night. He was booed throughout the game. The quarterback hasn't stood for the national anthem yet this year. Kaepernick argues he will not stand to show pride in a flag, quote, for a country that oppresses black people and people of color.
I'm Gwen Eiffel. On the next News Hour, we return to Joplin, Missouri to see how the town is rebuilding 5 years after a devastating tornado. That's Friday on the PBS News Hour.
A new scientific development may help Dory find a home in your own aquarium. A team of researchers have figured out how to breed the bright blue fish in captivity for the very first time. Associated Press reporter Marina Hutchinson will explain how it all works.
Don't cry, Mommy. Don't cry.
The blue tang fish, featured in the Finding Dory and Finding Nemo movies, has become so popular, scientists are looking for better ways to breed them.
Very popular because of their aesthetics, and the tangs are really an iconic species with their bright blue coloring and that bright yellow tail.
Finding Dory alone has grossed more than $900 million worldwide. Now researchers are seeking new ways to keep up with demand for these electric blue fish for aquariums. Up to now, it's not been possible to breed blue tangs in captivity, but researchers at the University of Florida, for the first time, have a solution.
The breeding of the blue tangs really started as a project in collaboration with the Rising Tide Conservation Initiative. The University of Florida took on this project to try and see if we could develop commercial production protocols.
It comes down to finding a better way to feed them, which will allow blue tangs to be grown on farms in Florida.
The blue tangs will only eat zooplankton, the natural food that's floating around in the ocean. What those are called copepods. We grow a species of copepod here that we feed to the tangs, but those copepods will only eat live microalgae. So we essentially have to grow live algae, then copepods.
So while the movie's focus is on finding Dory, Florida researchers have focused on finding a potential boon to the state's $27 million a year aquaculture industry, breeding the exotic blue tang for home aquariums. Marina Hutchinson, The Associated Press.
You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.